Hi, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I'm starting a series on drawing feathers and how to design them to fit the spaces that you want to put them in your quilts. And on this first video, I'm going to show you how to make a basic quilted feather, how to design it, and a couple of variations on how you can make these feathers. So I'll be working strictly on paper, and I will show you some tips on how I design a straight basic feather. When you're designing a feather to go into a space, one of the first things you need to have is a border as to where you want to confine those feathers, where you want them to fit. And that's what I have here on this drawing. Is I have an outline of the space that I want the feather to fit in. And right here I have a spine and well, two spines here. But before you even get to that point, you need to know how to draw a feather. So to some people that's it's kind of intimidating, because a feather is multiple parts. It's not just one thing. It's not just a straight line. It's not just a curved line. It's kind of a set of lines. But if you think of it as like half a heart or a part of a teardrop, it makes it a little bit easier. So in this video, I want to show you how to make a feather in a confined space, and this will just be a straight feather. So I'm going to start with my border, and I've just got a Sharpie marker here, and I'm going to make this about a 4-inch border. And let's say we want to put a feather in a 4-inch border. Okay, so here's our border. Now the feather is going to have a spine, and I'm just going to use my pencil for that. Now with spines, that's what you build your feathers off of. Spines can be straight, they can be curved, they can be single, they can be double, they can be triple. You can do all different kinds of things with a feather. But for this one, I'm just going to make this really simple, and I'm going to use a straight spine, and then we'll talk a little bit about the feathers and how we want those to look. So I'm going to draw a spine through the center here. So this is just going to be a plain straight feathers, nothing fancy about this. Feathers are going to have a starting and a stopping point, and on this one I'm going to start down on this end, and then I'll end it up here. Now your feather, just to, let me flip this around. If you look at a feather, it is kind of a half of a heart. That's how you would draw your feather to fit it in a spot. It's just half of a heart. But that heart is going to, that half a heart has to connect to different places. So if I have my spine here, it's connecting down here, but that feather's not complete until I draw in the next feather, and then it comes in and fits there. Now when I am quilting feathers, I'm not thinking a whole lot about all of these different curves. I'm doing it instinctively at this point, but I need a starting point, and I usually will put in a full feather, which looks kind of like a pearl or a teardrop, and then my feathers are going to build off of that. So these feathers are actually going in a different direction. So I'm going to start, when I come around, I stop here, and then I'm going to build this next feather up around it. So here is that half heart shape, only this is going all the way, it's rounded down here, and what I was drawing was kind of like this. And you can do it either way, however you want your feathers to look. But when I'm quilting, this is how my feathers come out. So as you are quilting your feathers, you're going to develop your own style and your own touch on your feathers. And if you go through a quilt show, if you have quilts hanging, like if you're working for customers and you have a lot of your work in the show with different customer quilts, even if you don't remember the top, you're gonna see your feathers, and you're going to remember it because of the work you've put into your feathers. They're going to have your signature look. They're going to have your fingerprint on them. So for this feather, I am going to start here, and I'm going to put in my little pearl, and then I'm going to build my feathers out from there. So we're going to touch near the top center of this feather here, and then just curve that around. So that's kind of like it's like a C shape. So I have my little pearl, and then I've got a C shape here, and then I'm just extending it down, and it's going to hit my spine, like right there. Now I can bring it out this far, or I can bring it in a little further like that, like I did on this one. Another thing you want to look for when you're designing your feathers or when you're quilting your feathers is you want the head of your feather up here to be fatter than the tail of the feather. So you've got a little bit of feather anatomy. You've got the spine, you have the head, which is the round part on the end, and then you have the tail, which is the part that touches the spine. So you want your head bigger than your tail. And when I am drawing feathers, I usually will draw them, build them up one on top of the other like this. I don't normally draw them in the way I quilt them unless I'm doing like a demonstration on my plastic, and that's just because I want to show you how to quilt those in. But when I am designing them on a piece of paper to put in a quilt, I will just do them individually like this, which is also one of the reasons why when I quilt them in, I don't pay strict attention to the way I have them drawn, because I'm going to quilt them in a little bit differently. So I have 3 feathers now. I started with my little pearl feather, and then I'm building up. This feather is larger than this one, and then the next one is larger, and I'm coming almost up to my outline here, where my boundary line where I want my feathers to end. So these feathers are all going to be the same. They're going to reach the same point from this point on. Now if you don't like the look of your feathers, like this one kind of has a little bit of a bulge, you can always redraw that. And what I just basically had was a little bit extra right here, and I don't need that. So just because you draw it in doesn't mean you have to quilt it that way. And they don't have to be exactly the same size. So let's say we want to stop the feather like right here. I could keep working up and just have it end in this corner and fill in a couple feathers here so it's very flat here. Or if I want to have kind of an angled look to my feather, let's kind of draw a angled line. I've got it about a 1/2 inch from my center point. Now these feathers are going to gradually get smaller until I get to the tip, and I'm going to stop this one right here. Now these feathers are going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw my little pearl, and then I'm going to draw this feather off the top of that one, and this one off the top of that one. Now if you want your feathers very formal and you want the same number of feathers on each side, you're going to have to watch that, and that may help if you start drawing your feathers in from the spine as opposed to from the tip, because that way you can get your feathers, you can line them up right here. Like if I want this feather to end right there and my next feather to end there too, on this point I'm going to have to draw them from there and end them that way. Now I'm getting up to my triangle or my angle mark, so I want to make these smaller and this one smaller, and now I have kind of a triangular type space here, and then I'm just going to cap off the feather here like that. So I have one feather in the middle of the entire feather plume. So try that out, practice a little bit on some paper. This is a lightweight sketch paper. You can use copy paper, like I have some sheets of copy paper or printer paper, and try it on that, and then try doing it in different shapes. Like if you had, let's do a triangle, and I'll do a 45-degree line 45-degree triangle here, a right triangle. And then I'll try and fill this space in here with feathers. And you can do that in lots of different ways. It doesn't all have to be a single spine with feathers on it. You can make your feathers so that they all face one direction. I'll do a pearl right here, and then I'm going to build these feathers off here, and they're going to go up this way and end over here. So I'm going to draw my feathers off of the tops or the sides of the feather I just drew. And when I do feathers in triangles, if I do it this way, using the long line as my spine, I like the feathers to go towards the point. I think that fills in a little bit better, and they don't look quite as awkward as if I started on one side here and then tried to fill them in. But you could try different ways and see what you like best. And there I have a feather there. Now if we want to do a feather with a curved spine, your spines can be a shallow curve, or they could be a long curve. It's all up to you on how you want to do that. I prefer a more shallow curve, but there are times when I have used a deeper curve. So I'm going to say, here's my center. I'm going to make a few marks for my center. And I have a swirls ruler that I usually use to make my curves, but it's going to be, this paper is too short for that. It wouldn't give much of a curve here for this demonstration. So I'm going to just draw a curve in. Now I'm going to do the same thing and start at the bottom and do my pearl and then build my feathers off of this. So just draw the head and then curve the tail of the feather down, trying to make sure that my head of the feathers are larger than the tail. They just need to be wider. Now these feathers are all within the boundary and stand pretty close to the boundary that I've drawn here. Okay, now I'm getting to a point here where this feather, this angle between this feather and this spine is getting close. That feather, the next feather is going to wind up almost laying down. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and lay the feather down, but I'm going to make it short. So what I'm going to do is put a pearl in like here, and then build feathers off of this one, and just continue to fill in this space. So what I usually say is when my feathers start getting wonky, I throw a short one in and then just keep building up the feathers on top of that short one. And by wonky, what I mean is that the feathers are starting to lay down against the spine. And then I will throw a little short feather in and then just keep going. And that's usually on the curve, the convex curve. As you're looking at it, as you're looking at the feather this way, this is the convex curve. That's the part that goes down. The part that goes up usually isn't a problem. It's when it curves down. So when I get to this side, this one is curving down, and this is where I would need to throw in an extra feather. So you can see here, and that happens because the spine is curving and I'm making the head of the feather wider than the tail. So I'm getting really close to needing to do something about this. See how narrow that is? So I'm going to throw in a pearl and then build the feathers off of that pearl and fill it in. And you don't have to wait until it gets that noticeable. You could do it ahead of time. You can plan ahead and decide that you want to take care of that issue before this feather looks like it's laying down too far. So here is an example of a feather with a curvy spine, and then how you throw in these little pearls to kind of correct your feather, to kind of bring them back up again so that they are not laying down on the job. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you got some ideas on how you can design your own feathers. If you did enjoy this video, I hope you will give it a like and share it with your friends. And I hope to see you in the next video, where I'm going to show you how you can design feathers for your borders and give you some tips and some tricks on how you can turn your corners. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my newest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.